India is set to surpass China as the world's most populous country.
India's goal to reach $5 trillion.
The number of people is impressive, but the economic performance doesn't come close.
Imagine this for a moment. India is now the world's most populous country. Apple, Micron, Hyundai and LG are expanding factories at record speed. Many people think India is about to replace China as the world's factory. Who needs infrastructure when you have 1.5 billion people, right? But here is a shocking truth almost nobody talks about. India produces only 2% of global exports, while China produces 14.5%. And if current trends continue, China's share of global industrial output could rise from 30% to 45% by 2030. Instead of weakening, China may become even more dominant. India's huge population should give it a powerful workforce, yet nearly half of working-age Indians are not in labor force, and despite all the hype, Apple still makes 80% of its iPhones in China. Forecasts are just as surprising. Goldman Sachs says that even by 2075, India's economy may still be smaller than China's. So why does the world believe India is about to catch up when the numbers say otherwise? Today we reveal whether India is truly on track to replace China anytime soon, or it's just a myth. Tell us in the comments your personal opinion. Also, don't forget to hit like, subscribe and share this video so you won't miss even more Global Myths Exposed series. For more than a decade, analysts have been searching for the next engine of global manufacturing. When China's growth cooled, its debt piled up, its workforce began shrinking, and investors complained about rising risks. One candidate rose above all others: India.
The numbers seem to fit the story. India posted around 7% growth in 2024, outperforming nearly every major emerging economy. Forecasts from the IMF and the Asian Development Bank suggest India could surpass Germany and Japan by 2027, becoming the world's third largest economy. On top of that, US-China tensions supercharged a global shift in supply chains. Suddenly, everyone was talking about China Plus One strategies, friendshoring, and de-risking, and India looked perfectly positioned to catch the factories leaving China. But here comes the twist that few expected. The world doesn't actually need another China. It needs China and something else entirely. China's scale, infrastructure, and efficiency cannot be duplicated quickly, and India, despite its boom, is not yet built for that role.
The hope was that India would replace China, but the reality is far more complex and far more interesting. For years, India's youth has been described as its superpower. With a favorable age dependency ratio until 2050, many believed India would enjoy a demographic tailwind, and I could only dream of. On paper, it looks unbeatable.
But the real story begins when you check who is actually working. Only about 52% of Indians aged 15 to 64 are in the labor force. In China, it's around 76%. That gap is enormous. It means millions of working-age Indians are not contributing to the economy, not building skills, and not pushing India toward the productivity levels needed to replace China in global supply chains. Then comes the contrast. China's workforce is aging, yes, but it is exceptionally productive, deeply skilled, and factory-ready after decades of industrial training. India's workforce is younger, but younger does not automatically mean more competitive. High-skilled labor in engineering, precision manufacturing, and semiconductor production remains limited, and companies often report shortages in the very areas needed to scale advanced industries.
The lesson is simple but overlooked. Demographics alone do not create economic power. Productivity does, and India's biggest challenge begins. Infrastructure is the backbone of any industrial powerhouse, and here India faces a stark reality. Frequent power outages disrupt factories, water quality issues delay production, and precision manufacturing often suffers due to unreliable systems.
Pollution rules sometimes restrict the use of diesel generators. Ports move goods slowly, and logistics remain weak. Add rigid labor laws, excessive regulations, chronic delays in land acquisition, and it becomes clear why India struggles to attract large-scale manufacturing at the same pace as China. China, by contrast, spent decades building a world-class export-oriented infrastructure network. Roads, ports, railways, and energy systems were developed with consistency and scale, enabling factories to operate 24/7 and supply global markets reliably. India, however, is still in the early stages. Vast areas remain underdeveloped, requiring massive investment before production can run at a global scale.
The reality is simple. Factories don't move because labor is cheap. They move because production never stops, because supply chains run smoothly, and because infrastructure is reliable. Until India solves these bottlenecks, the dream of becoming the next world's factory will remain just that, a dream. India has seen impressive growth, but when it comes to industrial scale, the gap with China is enormous and persistent.
For 60 years, China's cumulative investment has outpaced India's. Even in the rare years India temporarily outinvested China, in 1962 and 2007, China's much larger GDP meant the difference remained huge. Manufacturing tells a similar story. In India, it accounts for just 17.3% of GDP. In China, it's about 28%. Globally, India's industrial share may rise from 2 to 3% by 2030, while China could climb from 30 to 45%. Exports highlight the imbalance even more. India's trade volume has surged 78% since 2020. A remarkable achievement, but China still exports 7 times more than India. Factories, supply chains, and investment networks are deeply entrenched in China, making any replacement nearly impossible in the short term.
The lesson is clear. Growth alone is not enough. Without the scale of investment, industrial capacity, and export power that China built over decades, India cannot simply step into China's shoes. The gap is structural, not temporary. The world hopes the US and EU can somehow turn India into the next China, but reality tells a different story.
First, the US is focused on slowing China, not building a new China. Experts warn India can't replace China in US trade anytime soon. Even Trump's 50% tariff on Indian goods shows the limits of American support. According to economist Jeffrey Sachs, the US sees India more as a strategic pawn than a long-term manufacturing partner. Second, EU-India alignment is overhyped. Europe wants to diversify supply chains, but India's high tariffs, agriculture barriers, car tariffs above 100%, and resistance to carbon border policies limit the impact. EU-India trade, despite rising 90% in the last decade, is still only 1/5 of EU-China trade. Third, India cannot replicate China's supply chain integration. China is deeply connected to Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and ASEAN, forming an ecosystem that supports mass manufacturing. India lacks this network, leaving it isolated in critical industries like electronics, machinery, and high-tech components.
The geopolitical push for India may sound strategic, but structural and economic realities make it impossible to simply replace China. Ambition alone cannot overcome decades of entrenched networks, trade power, and industrial dominance. India's growth story is real. Long-term growth is expected to stay around 6.5 to 7%, and a rising middle class of over 120 million people earning more than $5,000 annually will continue to drive consumption. India is steadily gaining ground in smartphones, automotive, semiconductor packaging, renewables, and its booming services and digital economy. But here is the crucial point. India will not replace China. Its rise is different. India won't be the world's factory, but it will be a major partner, a complement to China, shaping global markets in unique ways. The country doesn't need to become the next China. India needs to become the best version of India, and the world will still change. So the myth is busted. Now tell us in the comments below. Do you think India will follow China's path or create its own future? If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe and share so you won't miss the next episode in our Global Myths Exposed series. Next one's brewing. Stay tuned.